And joining us now to discuss what is going on is Republican Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So tell us about what's going on here.
Well, so what's happened is Congressman Pascrell has filed bar complaints on the attorney that's represented the president in litigation in these battleground states. And what that's done is, of course, it creates a chilling effect and prevents the president from getting adequate counsel. And also, quite frankly, it's meant to intimidate, to silence, and prevent the president from getting due process. Because when you think about it, every court in this state, in every state in the country, has mechanisms to punish, if you will, frivolous lawsuits, attorneys, their clients, if they bring and push forward a frivolous lawsuit. This guy, he's not a party to the action. He's not a witness. He's not in any way connected to these lawsuits. But from far away, having not read the pleadings, having not participated in any of the hearings, he says we need to disbar these people. And I can tell you this, already these attorneys are having to pay attorneys' fees to defend themselves in these bar complaints.
And is there some consequence you think Congressman Pascrell should have to pay?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's violated civil rights laws first, but second of all, I think he's violated the rules of the House. And he certainly should be, we should pass a resolution, certainly at the bare minimum, condemning his action, because if we do this, if this becomes the new norm, and you will never see a unified nation, which they claim they want, and you'll never see people be able to get lawyers and counsel, because you will have canceled them, and you will, this is what tyrants do, and we've got to stop that, and I think the House can make that determination. We, just like courts, have the opportunity and the rules and the mechanisms to punish somebody who does this.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned tyrants. It definitely doesn't seem like something that should be happening in America. I want to ask you about Arizona, though, because we heard Dr. Ward earlier talk about forensic audits, and I haven't had a chance to ask anyone about this, but this is what you are calling for to be done in Arizona. Explain to people at home, what exactly is a forensic audit?
Well, a forensic audit is going to be a full audit, not just of numerical ballot to machine. It's going to go through everything from signatures on early mail-in ballots to actually looking at machines and software. It's going to be checking to see and make sure that you have people who voted, or the ballots that were cast were actually people who were on the voter rolls, which we have over 6,000 in Arizona that weren't. You want to make sure that the addresses were there. You want to make sure that these are legal votes versus illegal votes. And that's why it needs to be forensic. It's by people who are specifically trained to look for fraud.
Congressman, on January 6th, if the electoral votes come to the House, are you going to have any problems with it if it stands the way it is now?
I think that there's going to be a significant number of people who will look at it and say, maybe I can't vote for this. Don't forget that just a few years ago, the Democrats basically objected to every elector in the Bush scenario because they were still upset over the Bush v. Gore and the Supreme Court ruling. So don't be surprised if you see some members of Congress make some objections to seating.
Would that include you?
I'm sure kicking it around, I can tell you that.
What would you have to see to convince you one way or another?
Well, I think we should see an audit. I mean, so people in Arizona, the people who ran the election say this was a really good election, no fraud whatsoever. Well, let's do that forensic audit. And if you're right that there was no fraud whatsoever, then I would say, okay, then we lost fair and square. But right now, Americans, including 30% of Democrats, say they don't think it was a fair and square election. And that's what all of us want. We just want to know that our election is fair, square, and full of integrity, and we can rely on and trust it. If we can't do that, then it's Congress's obligation, I think, to step in and say, no, it's not fair.
You know, what about in terms of what's going on in Georgia? I know you're in Arizona, but in Georgia, there's kind of time is of the essence if you're going to change anything, because there's a runoff that is coming up in January. How do you think that people can determine that that runoff will be safe when we're hearing all the stories about what's happening in Georgia up to this point?
Well, that's a great point, and Stacey Abrams, who's kind of running the early ballot portion of the Georgia Senate race, she's already talking about how many people that they've been able to register, et cetera. It does make me feel very uncomfortable that we're going to see a fair election in Georgia. We're in our second recount there, and some of the same problems that existed in the first recount seem to be existing in the second recount. And that's a problem, and it calls into question election integrity. And when you consider that the balance of the United States Senate is in the hands of that election, because you have 2 senators up, and you still haven't resolved the issues concerning the presidential election, all eyes should be on Georgia. The amount of money that's going to be spent there also lends itself to questioning the integrity as well, because I mean it's a big money race.